Hey guys, this video is to help you get ready for SLO. I promise I will make this video because I know some of you have questions. Well, many of us have questions, and I don't think I'll be able to get everyone with what's going on this week. But I'll explain everything else that I want to do to help you throughout this process. Just to let you know, I've gone to two and a half trainings, I would say, to kind of understand a little bit more about SLO. I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm willing to do anything to help you. The first thing you need to really have open is the email that Candy sent you on 8/25/2015 around 6 p.m. And it has information on everything you need to know about SLOs, the revised template, the rubric, the background information, etc. So the first part of this video is going to go through what should be in each part of the SLO template, and then we're going to discuss the other handouts, and I'm also going to show you some examples of what that looks like. All right, so I'm gonna go to the template here, and the first part is the SLO template. Of course, you can have your name, the school, your course. The course for your SLO needs to be the course that has the most students. So for example, let's say you were teaching driver's ed and you were teaching AVID. And let's say you had 10 students in AVID and 15 students in driver's ed, then your SLO will be on driver's ed. So it's whatever class has the most amount of students. This first part is this first page. Those are just descriptors to help you understand what the next segments will be about. So you don't fill anything out on that first page. You just go on to page 2 of the document after you read and understand what it means. Student learner objectives. So when you have a SLO, your SLO needs to be very general. So I think of it like an upside down pyramid. Your SLO document goes from very general to specific. So it goes from a general broad goal that even perhaps multiple classes, multiple teachers and various levels of a subject could use, such as English 1, 2, 3, and 4 could have the same SLO. But when you get down to the specifics, it would change, the methods would change and differ. So again, it's a big idea that can be, tweaked and, gone down to a more specific part. And I'm going to show you what that looks like later. All right, the rationale. Now, if you use these questions as a guide, these questions will really help you understand everything about where you're supposed to place here. So, whenever it says what background work has been done in this area, you need to think about, okay, why is focusing on this particular goal so important? Out of all the goals I could have chosen, then why this goal? That's what that question means. And then the next question, how does this target align with the district and our school goals? You need to think about what early college is trying to accomplish, or think about our PDSA plan. You also need to think about the Horry County School District goals. So you need to think about college and career readiness. You need to think about how writing is so important in Horry County, how being able to do mathematics, functions, etc. are important in Horry County. So as long as they tie to the district goals, then you'll be fine here. And then you need to think about what you expect students to accomplish by, the end of your SLO. And you also need to begin to think, so you also need to begin to explain in this section, you need to begin to explain your pretest, and you need to explain, no, I'm sorry, I apologize for here. This section, you need to explain your background information that you use to get to know more about your student population. Did you look at their EOC score from the previous year? Did you look at, their grade from the previous year? What background information did you use to help you arrive at the decision for this SLO as well? So that's the rationale. And of course, standards, that's self-explanatory. The student population is when you're thinking about, mainly is the same things we would use if you're writing a long range plan. So students who have an IEP, students that have a 504, students who have a ILP, or meaning are students with a second who speak a second language or learning English language learners, students who are repeaters in your course. If you have students who are identified gifted and talented, um, if you have students, that, for example, homebound, that would be important to mention as well. So you just mention anything that could impact the way your data will be used, that would, that would describe any exceptional things or special needs for your students. The instructional learning strategies, that's when you begin to kind of discuss more about what you plan on doing to address your students' needs. So describe your plan to meet your students in your research-based instructional strategies. So you can bring in, um, any blended learning strategies. You can bring in any graphic organizers. You can talk about, I know when I spoke with Kelly earlier, Kelly is doing the high, middle, low, in her quadrant groups, which I think is such a great strategy. She used a previous year strategy to put them in a group of four. So that's your grouping strategy. Are you doing flex grouping? Are you doing, which means that you're going to continue to shift them around according to every week's data. So just think about your grouping techniques. If you need more help with that, I can help you. Um, where interventions will be used. So if you see that students are struggling, what are you going to do to ensure that they are progressing forward? So something to consider, will be like the blended learning strategy, you know, that one-on-one work, being able to differentiate instruction. Are you going to use USA Test Prep to remediate those struggling students? Allow them to cycle in the process longer because they need that extra help without the punishment. So that's something to think about as well. And even if you work as a team, that last bullet there, you still need to think, how are you going to individually identify strategies for your class? So if you have a similar SLO, this section needs to be different because your classes are different, your data is different, your approach should be different here. Okay. Of course, this is your assessment, your pre and post assessment. And again, so you just kind of describe what you've done here. How many multiple choice questions do you have? How many, open-ended questions, etc. And how do they help to identify your SLO? And of course, how it will be scored. Remember, in order for it to be a quality um, assessment, you need to have some type of rubric. They don't want you to have like a guessing game. Um, you know, they want you to say, okay, according to, and the rubric can be very simple. If you scored 90 to 100 on this, then you are considered to be advanced. This proficient, it could be like that, but you need to have clear parameters to show how you're getting your students to move from one place to the next. So we're going to talk about tier groups a little bit later, but that's just something to think about. Progress monitoring is whenever you're thinking, what am I going to use to make sure that my students are reaching that goal that I set for them? So progress monitoring can come for English, for example, narrating. If you're doing punctuation and you're focusing on that, then your progress monitoring could be, all right, I'm going to check in every week or 2 weeks. My students are going to take this assessment on narrating, and I'm going to see how well it helps them to, move forward, and then how much have they grown. If they're not growing, what am I going to do to readjust? So progress monitoring is going to be a very active part of your SLO. It is not going to be a part where you just set this time and don't revisit it again. So we can definitely set up progress monitoring trainings or sessions where we just sit down and think about it throughout this part. And um, again, we have data teams for that as well, so that's an important time to bring that up. So again, think about the tools: USA Test Prep, NORAD Inc., Chi 3000, IXL, Alex. Pretty much every subject area has something that they can use to show growth. So I want you to begin to think about that. Baseline and trend data. Again, this is where you want to start thinking about what data did you glean from your pre and post test that's going to let you kind of know where your students start. How are you going to start grouping them? So how many tiers do you have? Okay, I noticed that 25% of my students scored in the low area. 30%, are 16 out of 25. You can do numbers like that, or you can do percentages. It's better if you do actual numbers, so you can talk about how they're going to move. And then you want to talk about here again, where are they? Baseline trend data is just like, where are they currently being held? The growth targets, begin to think how many of them are moving. How are we going to get them to move to that next tier? So every student, even though they may be in that low tier together, doesn't mean that they all have to move in the same way. So if you have 15 students that are in the low tier, that doesn't mean that all 15 students have to move to the next adequate tier. Maybe 10 of those students will move to adequate, but maybe those other 5 may not be fully adequate, but they're going to show growth in this particular area. Okay? So don't think like, oh my gosh, every single student in my entire class has to move exactly the same. That goes against Slo. Slo is saying we're trying to individualize learning. We know every student doesn't learn the same pace. So it's saying that here you just need to think, what will my students do? How do I predict they will do? They may not do all the same, but we want every child to grow. And and of course, professional learning, you need to think, what professional learning, training, webinars, books, things, etc., do you need to learn to accomplish this goal? And of course, this part here will be left with Ms. Jones and Mr. Deach, and that is your actual sheet. So this video is just going to be to explain the actual sheet itself. The next video is going to be to look at examples and the other handouts that are in that email. Okay, I hope this helps so far. So this is just part 1.